There are certain kinds of people out in the world who'll fight monsters for coin, sleep under a tree, and leave for the next town before the mud's even dry on their boots. Folks call them witchers, hexers, Wiccans, and witchmen. Trained at mysterious strongholds like the ever-famous Caer Morhen, witchers undergo a trial-by-fire regimen that includes everything from dodging swords to drinking dubious liquids that would kill anyone else. All this so they can slay monsters, save villages, and maybe earn enough coin to eat something other than questionable stew. But before we go ahead to learn what makes these individuals unique, let's rewind a bit to find out where exactly these unique mutants came from. Back in the day, when humanity first decided it was a brilliant idea to settle the monster-infested wilderness of the northern continent, they quickly realized they were very outmatched. Enter the mages, who were tasked with figuring out how to turn humans into something more durable. Their solution? Witchers. Through a mix of alchemy, magic, and what must have been some truly reckless experimentation, the first Witcher was born. Now here's where it gets grim, and it stays grim, so settle in. Children, taken in from outside society, were handed over to Witcher schools. The most well-known of these is Caer Morhen, a fortress whose name most people either don't know or would rather forget. These children weren't recruited so much as collected. Candidates were most often drawn from the forgotten edges of society. Orphans, runaways, foundlings, and children that no family was going to come looking for. The kind of kids that the world had already decided weren't its problem. Occasionally, a child might arrive through other circumstances, some arrangement or obligation fulfilled. But the common thread was always the same. Nobody was coming to take them back. What followed was a process that makes ordinary military training look like a pleasant afternoon hobby. And then there are the trials. The trial of the grasses is the big one. And the name doesn't come close to capturing what it actually is. It involves the consumption of mutagenic compounds that rewrite the body from the inside out. The process is agonizing and extremely dangerous. A significant number of the children who undergo it simply don't survive. Those who do come out the other side are something that is technically still human, but only just. The most immediately obvious change is the eyes. Witchers develop cat-like pupils that can open wide in near total darkness or constrict down to almost nothing in blinding light. Their night vision is good enough that most witchers don't even bother with a torch when it gets dark. And it doesn't stop at the eyes. The entire sensory system gets overhauled along with them. A witcher can identify an animal species from the scent of its blood alone, and detect nearby creatures that are completely out of sight. Trying to sneak up on one is, statistically speaking, a poor life choice. Underneath all of that runs something deeper, a sixth sense, a capacity to feel things that goes beyond what any sharpened ear or keen nose could account for. Items of significance register with them, and people's immediate intentions are more obvious to them. It's this quality, more than anything else, that makes witchers such relentless hunters. They aren't just physically superior to the things they chase. They are perceptive in ways that are difficult to explain and even more difficult to escape. And physically superior they certainly are. We're not talking about impressive for a human here. A witcher operates at a level that places them in a category entirely different from others. Fights that would exhaust or kill a trained soldier. A witcher can end quickly and with minimal effort. They've been known to take hits that would knock a normal man unconscious and simply keep going. All the punishment their bodies endure is made survivable by one critical advantage. Witchers heal at a pace no ordinary human should be capable of. Wounds that would leave a man bedridden for weeks are shrugged off in a fraction of that time. A necessity when your daily work involves trading blows with creatures strong enough to tear through stone and splinter entire structures. The mutations also grant more magical potential than the average human possesses, which is what gives witchers the ability to perform their signs. Combat magic that is simple compared to what a trained mage can do, but still has the potential to turn a fight in their favor. The first of these signs is Ard, and it is about as straightforward as magic gets, which is not a criticism. A witcher thrusts out their free hand and releases a concentrated telekinetic blast that hits whatever is standing in front of it like a wall of invisible force. It sends men stumbling backward, knocks creatures off their feet, blasts open doors that weren't meant to be opened, and creates the kind of breathing room in a fight that can mean the difference between a clean kill and a messy death. Igni is the one that tends to stick in people's memories, mostly because fire has a way of doing that. With a gesture, a witcher can project a stream of intense flame from their hand, enough to set enemies alight, burn through obstacles, and discourage just about anything from continuing its advance. Some creatures that shrug off steel find fire considerably harder to ignore. Jordan is quieter than the others, and all the more useful for it. It lays down a magical trap, a glowing sigil on the ground that slows anything passing through it, and more importantly, forces certain creatures to take physical form that would otherwise remain incorporeal. Wraiths, specters, things that drift through walls and laugh at swords. Jordan is what brings them down to a level where a blade can actually reach them. Without it, fighting certain monsters isn't just difficult, it's pointless. Quen is the one a witcher reaches for when things have already started going wrong. It wraps the caster in a protective magical shield that absorbs incoming damage, a buffer between the witcher and whatever is currently trying very hard to end them. It won't hold forever, and a sufficiently powerful hit will break it, but in a fight where one wrong step means a hammer to the head, even a brief window of protection is worth its weight in silver. Heliotrope is not a sign that announces itself. There is no stream of fire, no glowing sigil on the ground, no visible force rippling outward. It is purely reactive, a concentrated defensive burst that meets an incoming blow at the moment of impact and negates it entirely. Where Quen wraps a witcher in a sustained barrier that absorbs damage over time, Heliotrope is singular and precise. One strike, one answer, and then it is gone. Sumna is perhaps the least dramatic sign in a witcher's repertoire, which is not the same thing as saying it is the least useful. It reaches into the mind of a target and does one thing: puts them to sleep. No suggestion, no bending of will, no compelling them toward a different choice, just a sudden and involuntary unconsciousness that ends the confrontation without any steel being drawn. Axii is perhaps the strangest of the seven, and in some ways the most unsettling. It reaches directly into the mind of a person or creature and bends it, calming aggression, implanting suggestions, or compelling behavior that the target would never otherwise choose. A witcher can talk their way out of a fight with it, turn an enemy's ally against them, or simply convince a hostile creature that there is nothing here worth attacking and it ought to move along. Nevertheless, there are, of course, costs to being a witcher. For example, the mutations render witchers sterile, incapable of fathering children, which is a large part of why new witches always had to be selected from outside. And there is another side effect, one less often discussed in polite company, that the mutations also heighten their libido. Over the years, this has earned witches a reputation, with stories of a drive that most ordinary men would find exhausting, following them as persistently as any monster. There is one more thing the mutations are said to take. Though it is harder to measure, many believe witchers feel nothing, that the process which sharpens their bodies also strips away their humanity. In truth, it is less an erasure and more of a recalibration. Their fear is muted, not gone. Forming attachments is more difficult, though far from impossible. What looks like coldness from the outside feels more like clarity from within. A witcher is not an empty soul wearing a man's face. They are simply changed enough that others find it easier to call them unfeeling than to accept that they feel differently, and that this difference is not always a loss. Ultimately, a witcher's survival comes down to one thing: mastery of the blade. They don't rely on brute strength or luck, but on a refined mix of tools, technique, and hard-earned knowledge that would make most mercenaries look unprepared. This shows even in how they fight. Witchers favor a single-handed grip, not for style, but out of necessity. One hand must remain free. Signs are cast mid-combat, between a block and a counter, in the briefest opening before an enemy closes in. A witcher using both hands on the hilt has already given up half their arsenal. The image of a witcher with two swords on their back has become iconic, and for good reason. The two blades are symbols of survival, reminders of the constant battle between the human world and the supernatural horrors lurking in the shadows. This delicate balance reflects the witcher's role as a protector, always walking the line between humanity and the chaotic forces that threaten to tear it apart. For a witcher, it's never merely about fighting. It's about maintaining a careful equilibrium between worlds. Each sword serves a distinct purpose, allowing the witcher to use every tool at their disposal to hold the darkness at bay. With both blades, they strike with calculated efficiency, selecting the proper weapon for the threat at hand, ensuring no enemy, human or monster, catches them unprepared. First up is the steel sword, the workhorse of the witcher's arsenal. Steel is used for the mundane battles, the ones that don't involve magic, curses, or anything supernatural, but still carry the weight of survival. It's perfect for cutting down vicious beasts, well-armored mercenaries, or random bandits. When it comes to the silver sword, it's important to understand that it isn't just any regular blade. This sword is the witcher's ultimate tool for confronting things that defy the natural order. Whether it's a drowner lurking in murky waters or a werewolf howling under a full moon, the silver sword is the witcher's go-to weapon for facing the most terrifying threats. When a witcher draws the silver sword, they enter a different kind of battle, one where the rules of the world no longer apply, and mercy is a foreign concept. In those moments, the silver blade becomes more than a weapon. It's a lifeline standing between humanity and the horrors that would consume it. But silver swords aren't forged from pure silver. That would make them far too soft. Instead, they're forged from meteoric iron, then coated in silver and etched with magical runes. This blend preserves the silver's monster-slaying potency while giving the blade the strength and power to endure the hunt. Even so, the silver sword remains a fragile weapon. Witchers must handle it with care, knowing that reckless use, like striking hard surfaces, armored foes, or crossing blades, can damage the sword. It is not a tool of brute force, but of precision, crafted for a singular purpose. Misusing it could change the tide of battle, leaving the witcher vulnerable at the worst moment. Steel swords, on the other hand, are typically made from either meteoric or magnetite iron. These blades are practical and durable, built to withstand the rigors of daily combat without magical reinforcement. However, it's important to note that a steel sword can also be used against monsters that aren't vulnerable to silver or are so heavily armored that only solid steel can break through. Some creatures shrug off silver like rain, but a well-forged steel blade can bite deep where softer metal would fail. But swords are only the tip of the iceberg. A witcher goes into a hunt prepared, and preparation means alchemy. Witchers are master alchemists, and what they brew would kill an ordinary person before they'd finished swallowing it. These aren't herbal remedies or folk tonics. They are volatile, toxic concoctions built from monster parts, rare herbs, and alchemical compounds that have no business being inside a living body. The only reason a witcher survives drinking them is the same reason they survive most things that would finish anyone else: the mutations. Their enhanced physiology processes what would be lethal poison and turns it into a temporary edge. Faster reflexes, sharpened senses, hits that land harder and cut deeper. Some potions stack several of these effects at once, turning an already dangerous fighter into something that operates well outside the range of what flesh and blood ought to be capable of. The cost of all that, however, is visible on their face. Certain potions push the body hard enough that the toxicity leaves a mark, even on a witcher. The dark circles deepen around the eyes. The veins darken and rise visibly beneath the skin. The eyes themselves go pale and then black, the pupils swallowed up entirely. It passes once the brew works its way through the system. But in the middle of it, a witcher looks less like a man who took some medicine and more like something that ought to be on the other end of a contract. It is, suffice to say, not a comforting sight for anyone standing nearby. Beyond what they drink, witchers also prepare what they put on their blades: alchemical oils, each one formulated specifically for the kind of creature they're about to face. Coat the steel before the fight begins. The oils don't make the sword sharper in any physical sense. What they do is make it more effective against a particular type of prey, in ways that mundane sharpening never could. Then there are the bombs, which deserve their own moment of appreciation. Handcrafted, alchemical, and varied enough in their applications to cover most situations a witcher is likely to encounter. Some are built to blind. Some carry poison that lingers in the air long after the initial blast. Some simply explode with enough force to make the point clearly and without ambiguity. They are not the flashiest tool in a witcher's arsenal, and they don't need to be. They are precise, they are purposeful, and in the right moment, they are exactly what the situation calls for. None of the potions or oils or bombs matter much, of course, if the witcher can't find what they're hunting in the first place. Tracking is one of the oldest skills in the trade and one of the most underappreciated. A broken branch, a set of footprints in soft ground, a scent on the wind that hasn't quite dispersed yet. A witcher reads these things the way a scholar reads a page, quickly, accurately, and with an understanding of what the details mean in context. And then there is the medallion, worn around the neck and shaped into the sigil of the school that forged the witcher. It is not a decoration or a mark of rank, though it functions as both. It is attuned to magic, and it responds to it. When a spell lingers nearby, when a curse has been laid, when something supernatural is close enough to matter, the medallion vibrates. In a profession where the thing trying to kill you often has the advantage of surprise, a piece of metal that takes that advantage away is worth more than most would think to give it credit for. And yet, for all of that, the world that created witchers has spent most of its existence trying to forget them. The moment the monster is dead, the torches are lit, and the children are back inside, the fear changes. The witcher standing in the square becomes a reminder that something terrible was close enough to need killing, and no one wants that reminder walking on two legs and asking for coin. Witchers are a necessity in the world they inhabit, but never a welcome one. So they move on, from town to town, contract to contract, sleeping where they're tolerated and leaving before they're not. No home to return to in any meaningful sense. No legacy to leave behind. No children to carry the name forward. Just the road, their equipments, and the quest for more coin. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you'll always get notified when a new video is uploaded. Until next time, take care.